Good afternoon. Today I have the honor of introducing our speaker, Director Amanda Senn. She's the director of the Alabama Securities Commission, where she's worked since 2008. As the director, Amanda is responsible for investigating and prosecuting fraudulent actions related to the sale of securities throughout Alabama. She also serves as the liaison to the Alabama State Legislature for the Commission, where she advocates for investor protections and market integrity. Under Amanda's leadership, the ASC is engaged in significant community education and outreach efforts to keep Alabamians protected from financial fraud. The ASC has developed programs and resources to help citizens become more financially literate, including special programs specifically tailored for our military members, women, and investors. Amanda is also involved at the state and local level in various organizations which address issues and promote awareness of elder abuse and investment fraud, including the Montgomery County Elder Justice Task Force and the Alabama Interagency Council for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. Amanda is also active and well-respected in the Alabama legal community. She serves in officer roles for local and state-wide legal organizations, and she is currently serving as the Montgomery Bar Association president up until February, which I know you're. Sometimes that could be a second full-time job. So we appreciate your service there. Amanda also holds positions in national associations for securities regulators and speaks for the industry in a variety of capacities. She's testified in front of Congress, in front of the the Securities and Exchange Commission for the United States and other federal agencies on a variety of topics. I'm sure you'll find out when she gets here, she's a very dynamic speaker, she's extremely knowledgeable, and she's very personable, and I'm looking forward to your presentation, Director Senn. So please join me in welcoming Director Senn to the stage.
Gosh, thank you so much. And all my friends that came out today in the cold, it's much colder up here than it is in Montgomery. I really appreciate y'all being here today. And I hope that you'll take away something that you didn't know about the commission, about the state. I spoke with the Kiwanis Club in Montgomery last month, and I said, guys, I'm speaking to the world's largest in Birmingham in January. Somebody mumbled something about, quality, quantity, and so with the exception of Andrew, this quality for sure. So several colleagues out here, I just admire the work that you do, and I'm excited to be a part of this group. So the Securities Commission, not everybody knows what we are and what we do. I always ask the grand jurors, hey, have you guys heard the Securities Commission? And sometimes they'll raise their hands, and they'll say, yeah, you guys regulate security guards. Well, not exactly, and not unless they're offering investment advice. I know, Lloyd, you know who the Securities Commission is, because we worked on cases in my friends over there at Burr, but we oversee the investment industry in the state. We investigate and prosecute many white-collar crimes in the state, along with the U.S. Attorney's Office, especially in Birmingham, who are very aggressive against white-collar criminals. But we license exclusively our state-registered investment advisors. We have a division that's dedicated to registering those folks and providing support and resources to the state-registered IAs. And sometimes I get phone calls from federal registered IAs and certainly broker-dealers. So everybody that sort of touches the industry is involved with us in some way. But we do like to consider ourselves as a resource for the industry because we see so many different things across the state. Like I said, we have an investigative division with 14 APOS certified law enforcement personnel that investigate white-collar crimes across the state. A big part of that right now is financial exploitation of our seniors. And my mother croaked when she heard that at 74, she was still a senior and protected. And at age 60, really, and above in Alabama, if somebody commits a crime against you, there are enhanced penalties. So be thankful for that. But there's also protections in the way of reporting, which I'll mention in a minute. We prosecute our own cases. I was hired in as a prosecutor, so we handle all of our litigation in-house, with the occasional exception of a larger case where we may get outside counsel just to help with pleadings, but we do litigate our own cases. And then, as Andy mentioned, we have a robust financial education program service that we provide across the state, but we can't do it without our community partners. ACEE is here. I know BBB, Carl Bates, you're in here. We have AARP and United Way Area councils on aging. So we work with them to provide financial education across the state because, guys, we see the victims in this state, they run the gamut. They're not people that are uneducated necessarily, but some people don't always have the financial education that many of you do, and they get caught up in some of these investment schemes. So we think it's important, even beginning in K through 12th grade, to provide financial education. So that's just a little bit, but our jurisdictional authority is laid out here. In addition to the Securities Act, we also enforce the Money Transmission Act that we could not give away to the Department of Banking. They would not take it. I wish they had, because it really wasn't a problem until cryptocurrency was created. And so with that, we have Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, but a host of other crypto-type firms that we provide licenses to. Some of them we do, some of them we don't. Some of them we'd love to shut down, and some of them have imploded, but I've got a slide on crypto in a minute. The Protection of Vulnerable Adults Act, I'll mention to you, but it's an incredibly important law in this state, and many of our financial industry partners are here. And what that does is it tells the financial industry that we want you to report if you suspect one of your clients is being financially exploited or scammed. What we learned from working with industry is that many times on the financial side, they know that a client is fallen victim to a scam, but because of privacy violations or concerns of privacy violations, they could not report or do anything about it. Well, this law in 2016 tells the industry, yeah, you can report it, and we'll give you immunity from liability. And so we have prevented, through partnerships with y'all, millions of dollars from leaving the accounts of our seniors due to fraud. And as you guys know, once that money's sent, most of it goes overseas. You're not going to get it back. It's just gone. The Nigerians have more money than the Americans do. They keep stealing our money. But that's that law. And so I applaud all the members of the financial industry here, because that is the reason why we've been able to prevent monies from leaving the accounts. Industrial revenue bonds, we'll skip that today. And then Lisa's law is a little known law that says inmates cannot profit from their crimes. The legislature put that with us since we investigate a lot of white-collar crimes. But what we found with the introduction and evolution of these Netflix-type channels is that all the criminals get a movie. And so many of them had begun profiting. Inmate correctional officers noticed that checks were coming in from unusual sources, and so we investigate and prosecute those people and get the money back to the families or the victims. So what is a security? I know some of you securities litigators in here, you say, well, I know all about that. I didn't 18 years ago know that a security really included anything other than a stock or a bond, maybe a debenture, but it's any one of these things. Most often, the securities in our cases are investment contracts, which are just, they don't have to be in writing, but it's about the relationship. So if I turn to my buddy Andrew, who I'd sat next to in church for years, we sat next to each other on the same pew because we go to the exact same spot every time, and if somebody's in our spot, we get really angry about it. But Andrew always makes sure that my spot is saved. It's a real case. And I said, Andrew, I know you've been raising money to help fund your granddaughter's college education. And, the stock market's doing pretty well since the Trump bump, but you just never know. I wanted you to know that I have secured some land down in Baldwin County. I've got developers lined up to build some condominiums. And if you just give that $10,000 to me, I can turn it around in 6 months, let's say, 120%. What do you say? We're friends. You've trusted me for a long time. We go to church together. What do you think? You're in. That's right. So, and what I didn't mention is that he doesn't have to do anything. I'll do all the work. He would be a passive investor. All of my efforts would go into this development. What we've just entered into is an investment contract. It doesn't have to be in writing. And like I said, many of our cases are just investment contracts. In this case here, it involved a woman out of Conecuh County. We do have women defendants, they're not always men, who stole from an older woman in church $10,000. She said she was going to develop real estate down in Baldwin County. She wound up depositing that into her personal bank account and stealing it from this older woman, Miss Delchance. We prosecuted her not once, but twice for stealing from the old ladies in Conecuh County. I want to give y'all an example of another type of securities fraud case, because the criminal provisions that we have are securities fraud and investment advisor type fraud, and then registration violations. So in Alabama, if you offer securities without a license, it is a per se Class C felony, with some exceptions. Now, I don't run out and prosecute people just for selling securities without a license. There's usually fraud involved. But we have a phenomenal industry in this state, and very rarely is a financial professional running up against criminal laws in this state. Sometimes we get lawyers too, sometimes doctors, occasionally there's a bad egg, but generally our regulated financial industry, they're top notch. I tell everybody that. But this guy, I always mention him because he will be back. Hopefully not in Alabama, but he does have ties here. He served time, he's back out. But he offered several years ago an investment opportunity to many people in North Alabama, over 250 folks. And what he promised them was an opportunity for part-time workers, retirees, students, stay-at-home moms who were looking for an opportunity to make a little money, And what he told them was, hey, all you've got to do is provide some soil. We're going to come out through my company, Cypress Farms, we're going to come out, we're going to test the soil, make sure it's conducive to growing organic tomatoes. I'm going to provide you with the secret sauce to grow those perfect organic tomatoes, and we'll provide you a greenhouse that is conducive for growing organic tomatoes. You don't have to do anything except tend to them once in a while and then pick them and give them to me, because I've also secured a contract with Publix to buy all of the tomatoes that you can grow. And so people started, over 250 people, entering into agreements with Cypress Creek, not Farms, to begin growing organic tomatoes. And this guy went out publicly over the news. He put up flyers. He was on social media to advertise his company. And people were excited. This is an example of affinity fraud. We've had a couple of cases here in Jefferson County, but people were excited about being a part of Cypress Creek, and boy, they were growing those organic tomatoes. And so this little girl with him, his sidekick, Jackie Wilson, would come out and take the soil samples, and then they would provide copies of the agreements, and this is what we used as evidence of the investment contract. But it basically laid out what the investor, or the growers, were expected to do, which was very little. And so for $9,950, you could do this. Well, people were growing tomatoes. They started picking them and providing them to Cypress Creek, and they weren't getting checks back. And I tell people this all the time when they want to get involved, and oftentimes it's private equity type ventures, which is fine, it's great, and it's a great opportunity for some, but y'all be careful, because the minute your investor gets mad, they give us a call. So disclosures. I know these guys are criminals, it's a little different, but people started getting mad because they weren't receiving a check. And so the BBB got involved in North Alabama. They contacted us. The news started asking questions. They wrote up articles, and it eventually got to us. Well, the first thing we do is issue subpoenas in white-collar cases and get records. Of course, one of the first that came back was Publix. They said, no, we've never heard of this guy. Then we pulled out all the bank records, which was easy before crypto. We could actually trace the funds, and saw that 75% of the money had gone out to Longhorn's personal expenses. He did buy these little sham of a greenhouse. They were like $20 that he put out, and a lot of our fraudsters do like to keep the facade going, but they weren't worth anything. And so, long story short, we wound up being able to indict him and little Jackie, his sidekick, on several counts of securities fraud. It was our hope that Jackie would roll, and she did initially. And she cried, and she said, oh, we just took those soil samples and we threw them out in the back, and we never got anything tested, and I'm sorry, I'll never do this again. So after indictment, we let her out, and then eventually Jamie Longhorn was set a $1 million bond. We lowered it, agreed to at $300,000 and an ankle monitor. Jamie cut the ankle monitor. He fled to North Carolina. The only reason we knew this is because Jackie went with him. And so long story short, once we realized he was in North Carolina, we had agents on the ground. We caught wind of his whereabouts from other law enforcement partners, and they said, we got there and started talking to people, and this guy has started a worm farm with the identical business model that he did in Alabama. So he learned we were on his trail. We got over to North Carolina. He had fled, but somewhere in there he pissed off Jackie, and Jackie got mad. So eventually she talked, but he went down to Florida, and I kid you not, I didn't bring the business card. I wish I had. He started Pockle's Pickles, and it was a pickles program identical to his tomato operation. During the investigation, we learned that he had also started a bunker program in Tennessee and in Kentucky and a satellite radio type thing in Tennessee. He is a con artist through and through. He just served sometime. He'll be back. Dog the Bounty Hunter wanted to get involved, and his son had relationships with our Madison County. And I got a video one night at 11:30 of their arrest, finally, in Florida.
Jimmy Gilly, say hi. Say hi to the SEC, the state of Alabama. SEC? Yes, Securities Exchange Commission. Look who I found out back. James, come on. Come on. Thank you, ma'am. We're back.
Yeah, that's right. State of Alabama. There's a few expletives, so don't play the end. But anyway, it's been written up. But I like to highlight this case because I know James Longhorn, Jamie Gilly, whatever his alias is, he'll be back. So pay attention to this guy. Learn his face. We don't always see, like I said, securities registration violation cases. Occasionally, if we know somebody's just come into Alabama, not an Alabamian, and we know they're committing frauds in our state, a lot of these are business related, we'll charge, bring them in, let them plead or dismiss, but most of the time we reserve this for our out-of-state folks. Like I said, we don't have many registered professionals that run afoul of criminal laws, but occasionally, once every 10 years, we'll get one, and I highlight David Stroud out of Lee County. He was a licensed professional for many years, and he had over $6 million that he was managing for a few of our senior citizens in this state. He wanted to start a hedge fund, and so you guys, everybody in here is a trusted professional. You have clients that rely on you because of your stature and because of your education, and so what makes these crimes so egregious is the violation of trust. And also in our exploitation cases, because many of them involve family members and close friends. But this guy had a relationship with his clients, and they trusted him, and I think he may have said, hey, I'm starting a new fund, I'm going to move you here. But many of them were retirees late in years, and they went along with him. Well, he stole their money. These are fraudulent bank statements that he created, fabricated, and sent out, and devastated his clients and our retirees, seniors in this state. He served time, but he's back out. I heard he was at Troy. Maybe he's been rehabilitated. I don't know. I haven't received any complaints on him. But this was a sad situation. Again, another fraudulent statement. So when clients would log into his new fund, they would find a balance that was not real, when in reality, this was one of the accounts he had. It was negative $58,000. So those are some of our fraudsters, but most of them are not creating anything new. They're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, they're literally ripping old frauds that have been around for years. The only one I'll mention here is the sale of the Eiffel Tower, because many of our frauds involve sales in items, property, etc., where the fraudster has zero interest in it whatsoever. So this guy, in 1925, just to back up, the Eiffel Tower was built in 1886 in anticipation of the World's Fair in Paris, France, and also to commemorate the French Revolution. And so the World's Fair was very popular, but then afterwards, the Parisians said, we're sick of this. It's an eyesore, it's getting rusty, we can't maintain it, and the government started talking about deconstructing it. And this is what our fraudsters do. They did it during COVID. They find whatever is the latest headline, then rip it off and turn it into some sort of fraud. So Victor Lustig, it's an alias, said, you know what, I'm going to use this and sell the Eiffel Tower. And so this is so typical of our criminals. He's educated, he was inspired by a news article, he produced all this fake stationery, he stayed in a fancy hotel, he got people talking about buying the Eiffel Tower, and he had them down in secret meetings. There were select few that would come in for these meetings. And eventually, he got a seller. And he did it not once, but twice he sold this. And the money that he made on each time, he had his seller lined up, and he said, I can go ahead and get this done. And before the seller was lined up, you will be that person if, I'm a government employee, a little kickback, a little bribe. So this is the two times he sold it, it was through bribes, and over 200,000 euros at the time, or now 200,000 euros. But twice he did this. He also perpetrated several other frauds, but only twice he sold in Paris. And like I said, this one's so typical of our frauds. Investors were selected due to their stature and trustworthiness, and he had a passion for women and gambling. And so we get bank records, and now we do have crypto tracing, and we can see money going to different ventures and things, and many times our defendants do like to spend money on their women, and they gamble it, and that's just the theme. So if you have a predilection for women and gambling, make sure you also don't for criminal activity as well. But I thought this was pretty funny. I added this last night. Lustig also came up with this guide for fraudsters that he circulated among his friends. He said, be a patient listener, wait for others to reveal their political opinions, then agree with them. This Jamie Longhorn didn't follow. Never boast, just let your importance be quietly obvious. Never look bored, never get drunk. But those are his words. But let's shift gears to the financial exploitation, because that's one of the biggest threats in Alabama right now. I can't tell you how many dollars are lost to scams and things when, we have a lot of seniors that live alone. They don't have someone looking out for their accounts, their finances. Sometimes they're afraid to ask questions, but because of our financial industry in this state, we have been able to prevent, like I said, millions of dollars from leaving the account. Financial exploitation is essentially theft in connection with anything. One of the biggest ones that we see is through the power of attorney. And all you lawyers in the audience that have had to deal with power of attorney, they're a headache, and it's hard sometimes, recognizing which ones are legit and which ones are not. So we do talk through those issues a lot of times with industry and on the legal side too. We have 3 reporting laws that contribute to helping us identify these cases. The first one's the one I mentioned, Alabama state law in 2016. This says that the securities industry is required to report. You can also hold the transactions or delay the disbursements. And, we usually talk through these very informally. I've taken many, many calls from lawyers in this room trying to work through some of these cases. I feel this is one of our strongest partnerships. Later, the banking industry came out in Alabama and said, well, we want to offer the same protection. So we've just become the catch-all for every financial institution. We get banks and on the securities industry side. And then Congress came out with a little Senior Safe Act that basically gave immunity to everyone if they train people on how to identify. But I thought it would be helpful to provide y'all a snapshot. This is the first year it was passed, 2016. That was a 6-month period, I should say. We received 23 reports. This year, and this does not cover the month of December, end of November, December, 243. I'm told that we have close to 300 from last year reports. That's just from financial industry. A little breakdown, because I was curious. We could only do it for the past few years, but I'm hoping to go back further. At the age group, as you might expect, 60 to 70, 164, 71 to 80, 273, 81 to 90, 148, 91 plus. We do have a lot of people living long, nice lives here in Alabama despite our eating habits, which people complain about across the country. I think we have a great life. 44, and then male versus female. I hear some of the guys say, well, you know what, we don't get involved in romance scams. Well, you sure do. I get all the reports, and many of these are romance scams. Male versus female, 291 versus 328. These are just a few examples from our reports. So this one, DC, our victim, made multiple disbursements from her Fidelity account to her bank account. So the bank noticed this one. They picked up the phone and called us. She believed she was helping a friend from Italy. Red flag, was going to receive twofold. And they said, hey, look, we called Fidelity, talked to the bank, someone she met online. And so we prevented those transactions, and they were, several $100,000. I took out the one about Alan Jackson. That was a red flag. She was helping Alan Jackson move from Tennessee. Thank you for reporting. This one reported that broker-dealer. I mentioned this one because we have a lot of firms that are being, there are imposter frauds going on. So they are creating fake websites that look identical to the broker-dealer sites. Charles Schwab was one of them, and it's hard for the clients to tell. And so this person was, it was an imposter fraud involving someone who said that they were their broker-dealer. So I think, anyway, the point of this one is the imposter, and then we resolved it through a third-party contact, so trusted contacts. I'm not here to talk about that, but if you're in the financial industry, those are so important because that's how we resolve a lot of these cases. They don't always happen through the phone or internet. Sometimes our defendants are within our communities. I highlight this guy. He's in Montgomery and just happened to developed friendships, very close friendships in some instances, with 4 of the older women, in Montgomery, who were living alone, and 3 of them were widowed. And they trusted him. He developed friendships with them, and they wound up giving him money to help with his projects, one of which was flipping at his grandmother's house that he inherited. Long story short, he wound up stealing the money, of course. We received that complaint, though, because a financial institution, a bank, happened to notice that this woman was coming in to withdraw large sums of money to deposit in a Bitcoin ATM. So the bank reported, and that's the only reason we discovered it, because the victims did not want to talk. They thought that they had the closest friendship with this guy. Long story short, they wound up learning of each other, and it was heartbreaking, truly a heartbreaking story. This guy just went to federal prison. We wound up prosecuting him on state and federal charges to get him incarcerated longer because he's such a scumbag. And the things that he told these women, y'all, it was, like I said, it's heartbreaking. And one of them is since deceased, but the other 3 are devastated emotionally, physically. And so, like I mentioned, the bank said, hey, Miss Friday, was her name, is coming in and withdrawing large sums of money. The investigation revealed that she had been going to a Bitcoin ATM. And so, segueing now into the cryptocurrency type cases that we see for a minute, because I want y'all to know that I know Trump picked it up as part of the Republican platform. I'm thrilled. He did. I understand why he did it. In 2019, he didn't like it. He thought it was criminals currency like the rest of us. I know Lloyd, if he's still in here, we call it the criminals currency. I don't know what will happen with crypto. I get it. Everybody's high on it right now. It's like gambling. A lot of people in the state love it because they're making lots of money, like gambling. The problem that I have is with the firms that are popping up around crypto. So FTX was a big one, obviously, that imploded. They were making loans. There were conflicts there that banks would never get away with. They'd be indicted for, many of them. They were spending money unlawfully. AML violations abound. TD Ameritrade got hit, $3.1 billion in fines for not having AML policies and procedures in place. When these crypto firms are essentially could get away with murder, they don't have AML in place. So Coinbase, Celsius, BlockFi, Voyager, Gemini, all of them that popped up and began providing services identical to banking services and those of depository institutions, we started cracking down and, we said, hey guys, y'all want to be a financial institution, you need to play by the same rules. You need to have AML procedures and cyber procedures, minimal capital requirements, et cetera. So I don't know what will happen. It's my hope, because we have talked to, those in Congress many times, that there will be a regulatory framework that doesn't disparage our legit financial industry. But I mentioned this because Bitcoin ATMs started popping up. And as you know, ATMs are affiliated with banks. And so the banks provide the oversight. And they have to apply rules. And we license money transmitters. We don't license those of banks because they're already licensed, so they're exempt. But these things started showing up, and they're little money laundering machines. And when many of our victims said, well, we were instructed to go to the Bitcoin ATM. So I said, what about these ATMs? We would go to the location of the ATM. Most of the time it was at a gas station. And the owner said, well, we don't know anything about this ATM. They're like leasing space from us. I don't know who the proprietor, the owners are, or their leadership team. I don't know anything that's going on. They're just leasing space from us. And so several years ago, we issued letters and said, hey, you guys, y'all want to be a money transmitter, you need to get licensed. We want to know who you are. We want to know where the money is being held, whether you can actually fund these transactions, et cetera. So upon that letter, half of them shut down. I know the Northern District prosecuted some of them, but some of them did get licensed. And so the fate of the Bitcoin ATM, I don't know, but they're still just little money laundering machines. Don't use one if you're trading in crypto because they charge outrageous fees that bank ATMs would never get away with. So Monetary Transmission Act, I'll wrap up in just like 3 minutes, okay, is the law I mentioned that allows us to have oversight over money transmitters. And so we have, let me just skip straight to the crypto banks, sent letters out to many of these firms and said, hey, you guys, y'all, if you're just exchanging crypto, you're just acting as a money transmitter, get a license. And many of them have one. Coinbase has a license with us for the money exchange functions. Now we've taken a position that they don't have a license to engage in their securities-like activities that we say is staking, which is basically put options. I mean, they're putting money down, they're collecting fees on that, they're loaning that money out, they're conducting transactions that we believe at this point, this litigation may all go away after January 20, we'll see. But we believe they need to have a license too, just like our securities folks here. But so money transmission, we've collected a lot of that. And so I bring up cryptocurrency. Like I said, a year from now, it'll be interesting to see. For those of you who could care less about crypto, I did want to make it clear, and I'm sure some of you in there have crypto, you love your crypto accounts, you're making lots of money right now, and I'm glad for you, Alabamians, we want you to prosper. But just know that crypto is not synonymous with blockchain. So there's a huge push, for blockchain and blockchain technology. And the crypto proponents will say, yeah, we love blockchain, which means they love crypto and they want to keep it. It's like a euphemism, for cryptocurrency. But crypto and blockchain are two different things. And so for the crypto side, in order to view your account, you can just essentially log on and say, well, let me see what's so, interesting about the blockchain. Proponents say, well, it's transparent. You can see anything about anybody. All the data is public. That is true. But what does it mean? And from a law enforcement standpoint, just wanted to illustrate the blockchain at work. So this is a snapshot of the Explorer. So if you had Bitcoin, you want to see where, how the transactions, whose wallets, electronic wallets you can create online, identical to physical wallets, so just hold your digital assets, where that money is being transferred, and the blocks that are being built in order to allow cryptocurrency to evolve and be created, you would see this. This is just a snapshot of part of that website. So this is a transaction from one wallet. They're all unique, so they're going to have lengthy identification numbers here on the from side at the left. And these are the transactions, I just picked one that was related to our cases, where the money was sent, the Bitcoin in this case. It says 2, and then down there it says load 1,991 more. What does that mean? So we traced out 16 hours for one transaction, attempted to trace one of our pig butchering scams here, and we gave up at the bottom. We could no longer follow the funds because most of the time these hit an exchange, let's just say a Coinbase, because that's the most popular. Many of Coinbase's accounts are used, and Crypto.com. But our American-based exchanges are really, they want to stay legit. They want to stay in business. So they're starting to collect a little KYC. And so through some of that information, we were able to trace out what we could. Most of the time it winds up in an overseas exchange and it's gone. Overseas exchanges don't provide any of that, and sometimes it's mixed up in wallets. It's pulled off the exchanges and put in a private wallet and tumbled around. But y'all, this was 16 hours. So the challenge for law enforcement in crypto is, do we want to even investigate these crimes? Because right now, 16 hours for one agent, and we got really nowhere with it, is sort of impossible. I think I have one more. This crime right here, pig butchering, was the scheme that impacted this victim. Pig butchering, y'all may have heard the term, but it's become sort of nationally recognized, especially during COVID, when fraudsters took advantage of crypto and its allure, and so they began creating fake websites and targeting people online, on social media most of the time, developing friendships, which I know none of you would ever do that, except I get all the reports from the state, and some of you do. Just be careful out there. You just don't know the situation that you'll find yourself in. And a lot of these, like I said, are crimes of trust. We don't want to distrust people, but you do always want to be careful. But so the pig butchering folks create a fake website that looks identical. Most recently, we had a nurse down in South Alabama who's about 45 years old. She fell victim to a fake website that looked like it was Binance. And so the fraudster will get you to put the money through the fake website. They'll provide some returns to fatten you up, and then eventually you'll invest big and they'll walk away with the money. Pig butchering has become, this was Wall Street Journal last week, sort of a huge fraud. And like I said, it's perpetrated through crypto, which is also used in dark markets by hackers, is exclusive tinder of choice for criminal hackers. And this is a pig butchering workshop here that Wall Street Journal was able to uncover when they started digging into this story. So these are just criminal enterprises. People are making tons of money perpetrating these crimes. But I'm just out of time, so I'm going to stop there. But we could talk about crypto, the metaverse, NFTs all day long. We've seen it all these last 10 years with the collapse of Mt. Gox on the crypto side. But really, a year from now, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that industry. But please don't hesitate to reach out if we can be a resource. We don't always focus on crypto. I did today because I thought it might be something that was timely given the election. And, you know, we have financial education resources. If you're in the industry, I always have an open door. I'm meeting with someone from Birmingham tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to talk about some issues on the regulatory side. So thanks again so much for having me, for my friends for coming out. I appreciate y'all. And Andrew for the invitation, and Ashley. All right, guys. Thanks. Yeah, if you have questions, yeah.
Maybe a couple of questions, if there are any.
I'll leave y'all with another complex diagram. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service. Just curious, from the back of my mind, dealing with bad guys like this, how do you, from a philosophical standpoint, seems like that you sort of got to adjust your morals and values to not take it too high for you on the head or something.
It's tough, yeah. Especially those, you know, so many crimes are now being perpetrated internationally. When you know there's a whole group out of Nigeria or Southeast Asia somewhere, and you want so badly, even, you know, we work with FBI regularly, they won't honor any type of service from Americans or work with us, and we just, you know, we know there's a group here, we can identify their location, and they won't go shut them down. And we see a lot of crypto going to China, Russia. The Chinese have made crypto illegal, yet they have many crypto mines here. But yeah, with the criminals, when we can get them, and we've extradited before, you know, Italy, Canada won't extradite. Mexico loves their white-collar criminals, but they will deport. And several other countries, just like, feels like whack-a-mole at times. But we have to keep fighting the good fight. We've already allowed this country to get to a point where, you know, California said, hey, $1,000, you steal it, that's all right. You know, get away with it. How far do we want that needle to go? I mean, at what point do we just give up entirely and let everybody steal everything? No, guys, years ago, I got a solution list, like put them in the town square for a week, you know, have them locked up and throw bananas at them for a week. And, you know, shame and embarrassment really is what we've learned through 16 years for me is a deterrent for these folks, especially stateside when we can get them in custody. But we're still very aggressive on the white collar. And that really doesn't respond to your question, but they're just everywhere. But Alabama, generally, we have a great group here, and not many of our criminals grew up here. They come in to our state, and so we're especially harsh on those that come in.
Anybody else? Thank you, Amanda. I feel like my heart rate is up. That was just a lot of intense information, but thank you. No, that a lot of energy I know out of your office, and we appreciate, as Bill said, your service and all that you're doing to try to keep us all safe. It's getting increasingly complex for sure. So thank you so much for being here today, and appreciation for your time. We're making a donation in your name to the Miracle League. So thanks again for being here. Again, great to see everybody back for the new year. We hope you'll make plans to join us every week, every Tuesday. We have some fantastic programs coming up. As you heard, the mayor will be with us next week for the State of the City. Some other upcoming programs include Mike Succo, CEO of Coca-Cola Bottling Company United, Helena Duncan, President and CEO of the Business Council of Alabama, Greg Sankey, our SEC Commissioner, different SEC, Michelle Kong, co-founder of Culture City, our president of Auburn University, Chris Roberts. That will be a joint meeting with Rotary. Stephanie Bryan, the tribal leader of the Porch Creek Indians, Miller Gervin, president of the EDPA, and then a program with the Alabama Symphony Orchestra, and much more to come. So please put this on your calendars. Plan to join us. Thanks for being here. Have a good rest of your week. Stay